It's August 8th, 2024, at 8:30 in the morning. Along is coming from China, and he's just climbed over a hill on the U.S.-Mexican border by Mexicali. He checks the map. This should be America now. The steep rocky hills behind him, an abandoned California railroad runs all the way to the horizon. After 3 months of risking his life, depleting his savings, and getting captured by immigration police 7 times, Along has finally reached the land of his dreams. Now what?
A massive surge of migrants flooding across the southern border from a country that you may not expect. They are Chinese.
Over the course of the 2022 fiscal year, Border Patrol encountered over 27,000 Chinese migrants. In the next year, that number nearly doubled. It was part of a historic wave of Chinese migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border in the years after COVID.
There is a serious national security concern, and we should be looking closely at individuals coming from communist China, the United States' greatest adversary on the world stage.
Young people like Along braved the once unthinkable route through the Darién Gap, a perilous Central American jungle, dense with dangerous wildlife, inhospitable terrain, and armed cartel forces. They call it walking the line.
For Along, the decision to leave came after a period of brutal COVID policies in China. His life crumbled during the pandemic, and so did his faith in Chinese society.
Health officials in China today confirmed an outbreak of viral pneumonia there can be transmitted by humans, raising the risk that it could spread quickly.
Late December 2019, coronavirus infection officially began in Wuhan, China. In the years that followed, Along witnessed starvation, economic destruction, and tightening government control. China implemented the zero COVID policy, a forceful attempt to eliminate new infection through aggressive public health measures like physically barricading people from leaving their homes. Businesses across the country went bust. Shops closed down. Along said he was painfully unemployed for years. No matter how hard he tried, he could not find a job that sustained him. He stayed in lockdown for months in despair, having nothing to eat except rice porridge. Even after the lockdown ended, Along struggled to rebuild his life in China. So he took a leap of faith, one that crossed oceans and continents, a decision he could not take back. In May 2024, Along headed to America to seek asylum with nothing but a backpack and a loose plan.
Sadly, I think those people who made their way to the United States, they probably encountered a U.S. that didn't quite match up to their expectations.
That's Rory Truex, Associate Professor of Politics and International Affairs at Princeton University. He focuses on Chinese politics and authoritarian governments.
Especially now when we see this targeting of immigration and this hostility towards anybody who's an immigrant, whether it's legal or illegal.
A few months after Along arrived, Donald Trump was sworn in for a second term.
All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border.
National emergency. It's a phrase that we've been hearing more and more from the White House.
National emergency.
National emergency.
National emergency.
The southern border, an emergency. Crimes in D.C., emergency. International tariffs, another emergency. In Trump's first month in office alone, he declared 7 national emergencies, an average of what past presidents would have declared over the course of 4 years. These declarations are more than political drama. They're power moves to fast-track policies without congressional approval. Emergencies are opportunities for control. Today, we ask what it's like to live in crisis under 2 global superpowers, China and the United States. We will follow the odyssey of one man from Shanghai to New York and hear how his life has been shaped by one emergency after another. I'm Lacey Healy.
I'm Aria Young.
And this is Things That Go Boom. There is a lot of news right now. Immigration enforcement, AI and the future of work, questions about presidential power and the economy, big stories that move fast and can be difficult to make sense of. That's why NPR's Consider This slows down to focus on one major story at a time. What's happening, why it matters, and what you need to know. And they do it all in under 15 minutes. This is the big thing for me, because I love to listen to my news, but I don't always have a lot of time. And I love how clearly Consider This explains the bigger picture, not just politics, but what those changes could mean for government, institutions, and daily life, from aliens to the Iran war and everything in between. The podcast is hosted by the award-winning journalists behind NPR's All Things Considered, who know it's not enough to just tell you what happened. They help you understand why. Follow NPR's Consider This podcast and keep asking why.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
我们在这个报道里面叫你阿龙，可以吗？
可以的，可以的。
I first met Along in Flushing, New York back in 2024, a Chinese enclave where new migrants gather to survive. He was polite, spoke softly. He struck me as someone whose dignity meant a lot to him. To protect his identity, we're calling him by his nickname Along. It means dragon in Chinese.
我是89年出生的。
Along was born in 1989 to a rural, working-class family in Hubei, China. He described himself as a well-behaved kid. Growing up, his parents worked in urban centers all year long, leaving him behind with his grandparents, and later all by himself. In elementary school, Along remembers waking up to an empty home and cooking for himself. Without any adults around, Along said he always felt a sense of fear deep down. Other kids had parents to protect them if they got into trouble, Along said, but he didn't. So he had to behave the best he could. He threw himself into school until his honors and awards covered a wall at home. That focus got him into a top university in the country, and a few years after graduating, Along moved to Shanghai, a bustling metropolis known for its international influences, rapid innovation, and diverse culture. Having grown up in solitude, Along found his place in a city where independence is the norm. No one was watching him, and the anonymity felt right this time. Along loved Shanghai. He felt like he could finally belong. Anyone can find their place in Shanghai, Along said. No matter where you come from, there's a light for you here. His fearful heart started to calm down. The anxiety of his younger years was now making way for serenity. By 30, Along was living with a long-term girlfriend that he planned to marry. He had 2 cats and a high-earning job in the city he loved. He was ready to settle down. Then the world stopped spinning.
China is reporting the first death from the new type of coronavirus. Health officials in China.
To understand the progression of COVID in China, we need to first talk about the Chinese government in the 21st century. Here's Rory Truex again, professor at Princeton University.
I think the important thing to know about China under Xi Jinping is that even prior to zero COVID, it was in the beginning, or in the middle, I should say, of like a repressive turn.
President Xi Jinping was first elected in 2013. And since then, he's been widely regarded as the most powerful leader of China since Mao Zedong, the first chairman of the People's Republic of China. In 2018, the Chinese Communist Party altered the constitution, removing the 2-term presidency limit so that Xi could stay in power for life. It was a signal of a new era for China, one where political control tightened and individual freedoms grew thin.
China is an authoritarian country, but even within the authoritarian world, it's a pretty closed authoritarian country. Things like freedom of speech, these things are written in the Chinese constitution, but they're always curtailed. And the social media environment in particular is highly controlled. So the government routinely censors posts. An entire part of the Chinese government is geared towards what they call stability maintenance, which is this idea of preventing protest, preventing collective action.
By 2019, China was already a highly centralized regime. The government had cracked down on independent journalism, human rights organizations, religious minorities, and famously, the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. In the middle of all of these crises, though, COVID enters the stage. Now the CCP has in its hands a high-stakes, indisputable national emergency. In December 2019, doctors in Wuhan started noticing the first few cases of coronavirus. In a city with over 13.5 million residents, that's more than the population of Greater LA, a deadly viral outbreak would be explosive news. But to local Chinese officials, it was better kept quiet.
So the Chinese government initially reacted in the way that the Chinese government does, which is they try to basically suppress information from reaching the outside world.
The local police in Wuhan even reprimanded a whistleblower, Dr. Li Wenliang, who first warned his fellow medics about the virus and later died of COVID.
Responses online reflected a profound grief and a deep anger. The two topics trending on Chinese social media were Wuhan government owes Dr. Li Wenliang an apology and we want freedom of speech. Both had tens of thousands of views before being censored.
Eventually, as the outbreak grew too large to keep in the dark, the full force of the Chinese state kicked into gear.
So the Chinese system has a feature that when something really bad happens, the Chinese government punishes people, but it also tries to show that it cares. And so that was the initial period of that kind of overarching response in an effort to control the virus with this very tight levels of control and lockdowns. And that would be a precursor to the upcoming 3 years of repeated lockdowns.
The Chinese government has a tradition going back to the Mao era, where the senior leadership sets a policy goal and lower-level officials fill in the blanks to achieve it, through whatever means necessary. At the start of 2020, President Xi waged what he called a people's war against the virus. And to local officials, this meant aggressive prevention and containment. Things like mandatory mass testing and quarantine.
各位媒体朋友们，大家好。
In a press conference held by China's State Council in January 2020, the Minister of the National Health Commission, Ma Xiaowei, said his country's political system, something like socialism with Chinese characteristics, had the upper hand when it came to bearing back COVID. We are confident, determined, and capable of winning this battle against the disease, Ma declared. And with that, lockdowns rolled out across the country.
So lockdowns were this sort of rolling phenomenon where if a case emerged, and it could even be an asymptomatic case in your city or maybe in your apartment building, you could be subject to lockdown on a whim's notice. You could be living a relatively normal life, and then all of a sudden you're put in a lockdown situation.
At first, the strategy seemed to work. Besides the regions that went through occasional lockdowns, the rest of the country mostly carried on with life as usual. As Americans clashed over mask mandates and social distancing, cases in China started to flatten out. Chinese state media boasted about the country's success, a testament to the efficiency of its authoritarian government. At the end of 2020, the U.S. National Institute of Health was actually studying China's methods as a model for successful intervention.
China began to stand out as a country that seemed to have things relatively under control. And if you actually look at public opinion data during this time in China, Chinese citizens actually took that as a point of pride. And there's some arguments that early in the COVID outbreak, it actually enhanced trust in the regime, in the Communist Party.
But as the virus inevitably spread across the country, public opinion started to change. In December 2022, a plan was announced to keep new infection cases as close to zero as possible. While the rest of the world slowly relaxed their pandemic restrictions, China doubled down on its unwavering COVID policy.
That surveillance system that had been building in the early Xi Jinping years was allowed to kind of fully come to fruition. So things like people's COVID status would be linked to their phone, which allows the government to track cases and see where people are moving. If you wanted to get on the subway or enter certain buildings, you had to scan your phone.
COVID was an opening for the Chinese government, an opportunity to assert control in the crisis, Through moments of massive chaos and change, the state tightened its grip on the public.
So it became normal for everybody's movement and health to be tracked at all times, even their temperature, right? So there'd be these infrared temperature scanners. So this is what we call techno-authoritarianism, the idea that an authoritarian government is empowered and augmented by technology that was already happening in China prior to COVID.
In Shanghai, residents like Along lined up in their gated community every day for COVID tests, which he called poking the throat. Along describes a white plastic tent set up at the entrance of his apartment building, where lights were on 24/7 and one or two government workers were always there, covered head to toe in white hazmat suits, preventing residents from leaving. These COVID staff are nicknamed 大白, Big White. Along said the only time he'd see other people or leave his apartment was to take the daily COVID tests. Across the country, frustration grew as extreme lockdown measures took place. In some cases, police dressed as big whites brutalized people for not complying with COVID orders. Hospitals turned down patients with non-COVID-related emergencies. Children were forced to stay in school for weeks or months, separated from their family. In Lanzhou, a 3-year-old boy died of carbon monoxide poisoning after COVID checkpoints delayed his visit to the hospital. It was as if Chinese society had been paralyzed by rigid COVID rules. The big whites became figures of absolute power and authority. By November 2022, 340 million people were in some form of lockdown. That's a quarter of the Chinese population. Many people lacked basic necessities like food and medicine.
The food became almost rationed, which is sort of a throwback to earlier periods in Chinese history, and especially the communist period, where people basically had food ration cards tied to their work unit. And so if you were living in a large apartment complex, food could be delivered to that complex, and then it would be allocated probably through the apartments, like what's known as like the neighborhood committee, which has ties to the party itself. And so the party kind of took over the business of feeding people, and it led to probably some pretty significant inequities as well.
Along said even though the local government had promised food and resources early on, they never arrived at his door. After he ate everything he had at home, he was left with only plain rice. For about 3 months during the lockdown, Along ate only a bowl of rice porridge a day. He felt depressed and anxious, worried about eventually running out of rice too. For a while, Along considered eating the plants in the neighborhood bushes if the lockdown lasted any longer.
This is a fact that's often surprising to people. China is one of the most unequal countries in the world. The level of inequality in China is on par with that of like the United States. So people think communist China, they think that social welfare system that you would think of, but in fact, it's quite thin in many areas. And the local governments in China, which are often involved and tasked with poverty alleviation and taking care of the people that are worst off, have long been cash-strapped and were only more so during the economic downturns.
Roughly 5 million Chinese people lost their jobs in the first 2 months of 2020. Along was one of them. As he ate into his savings, his relationship suffered. His girlfriend eventually returned to her hometown to be with her family, and the two parted ways. After being laid off, Along had no consistent income or any job prospects for almost 3 years. His life halted in every way possible.
I think it was a time of real desperation for many families, and that's why this movement towards emigration started to take hold, because I think people felt like they needed to escape both the economic conditions and also the political conditions.
And by the end of 2022, that desperation was enough to send Chinese society to the streets. That's after the break.
This show is supported by Blue Land. We hear a lot about microplastics in oceans and food, but they can also come from products we use every day at home, including cleaning products. Blue Land is on a mission to make it easy for everyone to make sustainable choices. Blue Land believes that hardworking, clean products can be the norm, not the exception, so that you can do better for your family and the planet at the same time. From cleaning sprays and toilet bowl cleaner to dishwasher and laundry detergent tablets, Blueland's products are independently tested to perform alongside major brands, and the formulas are free from dyes, parabens, and harsh chemicals. You'll love not having to choose between the safe option and what actually gets your house clean. Blueland is a certified B Corp and Leaping Bunny cruelty-free certified. Their formulas are EPA's Safer Choice certified, and many products have also earned Cradle to Cradle's Gold Material Health Certificate. If you're looking to make a small change in your routine, you can get 15% off your first order at blueland.com/prx. Get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/prx. blueland.com/prx.
By the end of 2022, COVID had spread to every corner of the country. Remember the Omicron variant? A new, more contagious strand of the virus just when we thought that things were getting under control? In China, Omicron made bad vibes even worse. Everywhere, confrontations broke out against white suits. The internet then flooded with videos of people standing up to authorities, attempting to break through lockdown barriers, and censorship just couldn't work fast enough. Then came the last straw. On November 24th, 2022, against the backdrop of quiet night, a blazing fire ripped through a high-rise apartment building in Urumqi, Xinjiang. The city had been under lockdown for over 3 months, and the building door was barricaded to prevent people from leaving. Videos showed fire trucks waiting to get in as workers removed fences near the building. 10 people died in the fire, and 9 were injured. The COVID emergency had now turned into something that the government was more afraid of: mass mobilization. The deadly fire shook the Chinese people, sparking outrage across the country and even in Chinese communities abroad. In a rare sight of civil disobedience, Chinese citizens took to the streets, demanding the end of lockdowns and more. Protests broke out in major cities and on college campuses. It was the biggest collective action against the Chinese government since the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. The same nation that expressed confidence in their political system in 2020 now said it had had enough. Some protesters held blank pieces of paper symbolizing everything they cannot say due to political censorship. And some even chanted for the country's leader, Xi Jinping, to step down. After weeks of widespread protests, the Chinese government took a surprising pivot. They rolled back zero COVID. On December 7th, 2022, the Chinese State Council held a press conference announcing the new COVID policy, calling it a strategic optimization, and essentially scrapping the strict zero COVID approach it had held onto for 3 years. No more required tests, no more QR codes. And just like that, zero COVID was over. Fences were removed, lockdowns lifted, travel resumed. The Chinese government claimed victory over the virus as if all was well. And the people were left grappling with the collective trauma caused by one government decision and then another. In the next year, COVID's death toll skyrocketed, and the surveillance culture stayed.
I think the biggest change has probably been the normalization of being tracked at all times and having to use your face to do things, right? Like if you're in a public restroom, getting a piece of toilet paper requires facial recognition, which is quite striking. That's not everywhere, but that is in certain locations. And so you could argue that the COVID era allowed the Chinese government to experiment with a lot of these tools, socialize the population into their use, and is now being able to use them for kind of everyday political control.
The protests worked, but they also didn't. The state had changed irrevocably. Ending zero COVID policy wasn't going to turn that around. And it wasn't going to bring back Along's faith in his country. For him, after 3 years without a steady job, the damage was done. He was in a state of total devastation, he said. He moved to autonomous Hong Kong for a year in 2023. But by then, Beijing had already asserted its control there. He found Hong Kong becoming more and more repressive, just like the mainland had been. So Along asked himself how to get out of China completely. He wanted to go to America, a destination that may be the hardest to reach, but it held the most promising future for him, Along said. As he was researching ways to immigrate, Along came across a route that could work for people like him, who didn't have the funds or qualification for legal immigration. An unconventional route. He first learned about walking the line on YouTube, an illicit immigration route with the highest risk and the lowest requirement. He realized that it was his only way out. Along didn't dare tell anyone about his plan, fearing he could be stopped before he even set out. But there's one person he had to say goodbye to, his mother. He said he video called his mother and told her that he was leaving for a while. I might not come back, he told her. And we might not see each other again. His elderly mother started crying, while Along reassured her that he would call often. 4 years after his world turned upside down, Along was done living in fear. He needed a new life, even if it meant venturing into the unknown. On May 1st, 2024, he boarded a plane from Hong Kong to Thailand, dressed in a beachy outfit, blending in with the tourists. From there, he flew to several other countries before eventually landing in Quito, Ecuador, just a month before the country ended its visa-free policy towards Chinese nationals like him, due to the surge in illicit migration. There, Along started his journey to North America by foot. The first challenge, crossing the Darién Gap. Every year, hundreds of thousands of migrants risk their lives in the unruly jungles spanning Panama and Colombia to get to the United States. In 2023, a record high number of over 500,000 migrants crossed the Darién. But the cost? You could lose your life. Along said he saw 2 decomposing bodies by his feet in the Darién Gap, an image that shocked him for the rest of his journey. He felt close to death several times in the jungle. He crossed gushing rivers that could wash him away with one misstep. He climbed near vertical hills with nothing but a thin, worn rope that might snap any second. He caught pneumonia after giving his tent to 2 women who didn't have one and thought he might die. But Along survived it all and made it out of the Darién in 4 days. The most traumatic experience, he said, was not the terrain, but the malice from people along the way. Just a few miles into the jungle, Along said he was robbed by cartel men armed with knives and guns. They took all his food, and he starved for days, he said, drinking only from river streams. Robberies like this happened in every town he went through. Sometimes, Asian faces were especially targeted. Masked men would board buses full of migrants and search every one of them for valuables, Along said. Your shoes, your hat, the insides of your clothes were all patted down and thoroughly felt through. A humiliating experience that every migrant on the route had to endure. On August 3rd, 2024, 3 months after Along set out, he arrived in Ciudad Obregón, a city in northern Mexico about 600 miles away from the U.S. border. He had already been captured and detained by Mexican immigration police 7 times. He was headed north on a motorcycle he had just learned how to ride in a week. Along had $30,000 in his bank when he left Hong Kong. Now that money is almost all gone. He couldn't afford to be stuck in Mexico, so he gave himself a quota to ride 300 kilometers north every day, avoiding police and immigration checkpoints. Sometimes he would miss the nearby town and had to sleep on the roadside. Like on August 4th, just out of Ciudad Obregón, he found an abandoned radio tower to sleep in. There was no door, so he lit a fire to keep the wild animals away. In this video, the sun was dipping into the horizon on an open field, the sky in a beautiful orange and sapphire hue. Later that night, he said he found a black snake slithering in the dark room right before he was about to sleep. Along talked about these unimaginable events with such calmness, like they were just normal obstacles in life. Like all of this wasn't a catastrophe that just kept on getting worse. As I listen to his story, I'm reminded of the little boy who grew up alone and in fear. Like that little boy, Along still wanted more in life. On the run from his own country that failed him, it was America's promise of freedom that kept him going. And he would soon get what he wished for. It's the morning of August 8th. Along arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border in Mexicali. He found an opening where all that stood between the U.S. and Mexico was a steep hill. He cheered himself on. He was about 5 miles away from the Jacumba Hot Springs in California. All he had to do was climb down the hill, and he'd be in America. On the other side of the border, Along said he was going to find the closest immigration checkpoint and surrender himself. He nearly burst into tears when he got there. After 3 months of risking his life, Along made it to the land of the free. He claimed asylum and spent 2 days in detention at the border before he was released into the country. It's August 11th. Along is now walking on the streets of Flushing, a neighborhood in Queens, New York that has become a home for the Chinese diaspora. Without speaking fluent English or having proper documents to work, Along had to rely on the Chinese community to survive.
It's very simple. It's because Flushing has everything.
Reverend Mike Chan is the Director of Development at the Chinese Christian Herald Crusade. It's a global Christian ministry with headquarters in the neighborhood. He provides support for local immigrants with nowhere else to turn.
People come in feel secure. Well, even though, there are many bad things as well, but at least they feel they're safe here. It's a self-sustained ethnic enclave where all these new immigrants can navigate a daily life entirely in their native language.
In 2024, America was at a turning point. Immigration was the hot topic that dominated local and national politics. Over 24,000 Chinese migrants had crossed the border in just the first half of the fiscal year. That's more than the total of the entire previous year. Cities like New York were already overwhelmed by the influx, even before Along arrived. Back in 2022, New York City Mayor Eric Adams declared a state of emergency over the migrant crisis. He said that the city's right to shelter laws and advanced social services were being exploited to solve a national problem.
New Yorkers are angry. I am angry too. We have not asked for this. There was never any agreement to take on the job of supporting thousands of asylum seekers.
But Chinese migrants didn't typically rely on the city for survival. So communities like Flushing had to bear the brunt. New migrants often crowded what Reverend Chan called house motels, private apartments where several migrants cramped themselves into single bedrooms, dorm style.
The living condition in Flushing is so crowded, it's terrible. I had a home visit experience before. One little room, there were 7 different beds. The beds can fold, That means 7 people living in one tiny little room with no window. And they pay about $20 a day, a night, to sleep there. And then during the day, they go out to work.
Housing, jobs, and other resources were all stretched thin for newcomers like Along. He came to America for a chance to build a better life, away from the repressive regime at home. But just months into his newfound freedom, America faced a critical choice that could determine his future: the 2024 presidential election.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you the 45th and the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
On January 20th, 2025, President Trump was sworn into office for the second time.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much.
In his inauguration speech, Trump made it clear that immigration was on his hit list. This time around, his policy would be even harsher than the first time.
Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense.
On his first day in office, Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border. He called the influx of migrants an invasion of our country. And under the National Emergencies Act, he could bypass Congress and implement major domestic policies like deploying troops to the border, redirecting federal resources, and expanding detention operations. Emergencies became the framework for his presidential power. And under these claims of executive authority, power began to shift from Congress to the presidency.
I'll be very clear, and I'll put my own political cards on the table. I view Donald Trump and his coalition in the GOP as fundamentally authoritarian in nature. This is someone who lost an election in 2020 and tried to overturn the result. There is nothing more authoritarian than that.
Trump referred to migrants as criminals or spies, reframing immigration as an emergency that threatens national security. Rory says it's not the first time.
Certainly, we've seen moments in American history where migrant populations are viewed with suspicion. And often it's the product of a national security imperative, right? So we think about the internment of Japanese Americans during the World War II period. We think about hostility towards Muslim Americans post 9/11. So there is a pattern where people who come from different parts of the world are viewed with hostility. And I think what's notable this time around is that it's not limited to one nation. It's anybody who's, quote, not American enough. And that definition often boils down to race. There's definitely an undercurrent of white nationalism and white Christian nationalism underpinning what's going on.
Across the country, the ICE crackdown keeps escalating. Just within Trump's first 50 days in office, ICE boasted more than 32,000 arrests, nearly matching the number of total arrests in the entire fiscal year of 2024. Now, ICE arrests on average 900 to 1,200 people a day nationwide.
It's now been 2 years since Along first arrived. His immigration court date came and went, but he couldn't show up because of ICE presence at the courthouse. He could have been arrested if he had gone. Without moving forward with his asylum application, Along couldn't obtain status to work legally or qualify for health care. His optimism started to fade. I'm living in a constant state of fear, he said. ICE is carrying out operations everywhere in New York, so he had to limit his activities. Along had spent almost 2 decades of his life building stability and finding peace in China. But now, after crossing continents and putting his life on the line to seek freedom, Along is right where he started, fearful and alone. He could be arrested anytime, any day, he said. Sometimes he feels like a stray dog living one day at a time, having lost the ability to plan for the future. Chinese refugees like Along are caught in the middle between two regimes using the idea of an emergency to tighten their grip on the public. The home Along fled has turned more authoritarian, and the country he's run to is now scapegoating immigrants and refugees in the name of a national security crisis. Both governments are acting for the same reason, to maintain the illusion of control. Now, Along simply wishes to be forgotten. Whether it's China or America, he hopes the government could leave him be and let him live his life as a flesh and blood person, he says. That's all he asks for.
Next time on Things That Go Boom.
I don't think that it makes more safety for Germany when we got on some points a little bit border control. They look for other routes to go to Germany without border controls, and there is enough routes. 5 kilometers here is another bridge, it's Goldshire. 10 kilometers here is another bridge, it's Rheinau. It's symbolic.
Things That Go Boom is distributed by Inkstick Media and PRX. This episode was reported and produced by Aria Young and edited by me and Katie Toth. Our music is composed by Darién Gap, and Computer City Productions makes our show sound its very best. Thank you, as always, to our supporters, the Carnegie Corporation of New York and Plowshares Fund, as well as the Cologne Foundation, Riva and David Logan Foundation, Craig Newmark Philanthropies, Prospect Hill Foundation, and the Jubitz Family Foundation. We'll see you right back here in 2 weeks.
Oof, it's a good question. I'll try. Sometimes these questions are hard, Aria. I'm trying my best here.